4th, Community Development Commission, call the meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Tim.
Here.
Commissioner Alito. Chair Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Green.
Here.
Commissioner Stubbs. Commissioner Dean. And Commissioner Johnson the second.
Okay. Now, hopefully everybody's read the minutes from last week, last meeting. Motion to approve the minutes.
We'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting on February 10th.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, scheduled business. I'd like to turn it over to staff.
Yes, you know, I appreciate everyone getting your scores in. I added one more set of scores onto the sheets, which is why you've got the printed out version here. But I tried to include different options for you guys to consider about how to evaluate the applications. There's any approach is fine, and typically what we do is you have gone around and talked about each of the applications. If you want to do that, you go around and I think people benefit from hearing other people's comments or concerns. And then even though these scores are really just a starting point for conversation, they can be helpful, and especially if you start thinking about allocations today. So before we get going, I don't know when we're going to find out how much money we get. If we hear within the next couple weeks, I will still have to submit our plan by May 15th, which means it really has to be done and published by the end of March. So we have one more meeting, the March regularly scheduled meeting, which is March 17th, to finalize everything. And I would need to start including details about people who we, the agencies and the performance measures in the plan, which is what we do, is we have to kind of document it. So I just don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I assume things are going to be late this year. But in case the numbers come out, we just need to be ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say is the decisions, direction and thoughts about how to approach evaluating the applications and doing as much as we can to do would be great, but this is not going to be the last opportunity. Obviously, we need to know how much money we're getting, and then, if there are any questions that I need to ask applicants, if those would be helpful in your decision making, we can do that before the next meeting. So one of the things I didn't put on this decision method options is something that we try to do every action plan is identify priority needs within the community. And so the agency consultations that we have in the fall, it seems somewhat repetitive sometimes to do those, is an opportunity to go, is homelessness what our top priority this year? Is it housing? Is it a couple of things? Is it economic development? So another approach to discussing the applications, and this really comes down mostly to the public service category where we have a lot of competition, and how you might, if there's a priority need that you want the funds to address. We've got all of those priority needs in the comprehensive plan, or in the consolidated plan, sorry. That's another way to think about it. So with that, I don't know if anyone wants to get things started, but whether to just talk generally through each one, however you guys want to do that, and because this is really a conversation for you to then start.
Just start from the beginning presentations. I think I've got it before here. I've got the card here. Well, we could go, actually, let's just go on across the board here.
Yeah, across the
That'd be good, yeah, we can make notes or anything, okay. So,
Where's the bus? How are you council?
yeah, that is to help hire people or give people mileage to assist the elderly to get to appointments, to grocery stores, something like that. To me, that's a high up for me. It's not much money, so that helps.
It's leveraging volunteer work also, which is,
Yes.
that's a good thing.
Well, because it's not that much money historically, I think just random what they have.
I think so too.
On the point of leverage, I tried to score this time around thinking that, since our limited funds and somewhat uncertainty in that respect grows, that I wanted to score based upon using a limited amount of funds to leverage, some organizations' ability to expand themselves in general in the community over a large organization that has many multiple funding sources. And not to say that, those large organizations don't deserve funding, because they do, but I mean, just on a specific leverage. So I was trying to score, I don't know if it came out of my score, but I was trying to score based upon the leverage of a small amount of money into something bigger. So I appreciate that you mentioned that.
I've noticed looking at the scores, the tabulated scores, that, I mean, for at least the public service applications, they range between 87 and 91, right? And that is virtually identical, right? In other words, there's really, so I think all of them, the only thing I could take away from the scoring was that they're all above the bar and they're all good. So we need to figure out other criteria, like Robin was just discussing, how they're leveraging the funds, or maybe the other thing, if we could look at the strategy of how well they match our priorities, because some of them match the priorities better than others, and if we want to use that as a distinction, that would be useful. But otherwise, I tend to agree that leveraging is a good thing, given our limited ability to do that.
So anyone have anything about COG on the senior program? This is so low and they do what they can, I know that. Alright, so what is next?
So I just added the totals, sorry, up at the top on the screen here, but I can scroll up. And so the total amount that we have requests for public services is $143,100. So if we got, $55,000 or whatever, I mean, if you get, I'll put in 52,500 divided by 3,100. We're getting about 37%. We may have about 37%, or rounded up to 40% of what people are asking for. Just, but some people ask for a lot more money. Some people are very conservative and just ask for. I think they were all asking for what their needs are. But if it's helpful to know about what the if we're getting only 52,500, if we're getting 55, it might be closer to 40% or something like that. But I didn't think about including that in your packet before. But
And let's see, COG was asking 4,200, so we got that one. And then we're on Boys and Girls Club. And they're asking for 10,800, that's right, for the summer programs. Ideas, conversation.
I think that ended up to be about $216 a person that gets help. I think they said 50. So it's relatively low cost for CDBG dollars compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with that kind of thing though, because some of them, like I think it was Jackson Street, was pretty high cost per person. but they also, their goal is also like keep kids off the street, which, so now if you're actually preventing someone from becoming homeless, that's actually a big return, right? So it seems really hard to judge these, like, what was it, Code, I think distributes a lot of money to people, a lot of different interactions, but a lot of those are small interactions that are, not necessarily helping somebody out of homelessness. I mean, they're good to do. So those are completely different kinds of scenarios. And so comparing just that metric, I found to be really tough.
Yeah, there's a lot of apples to oranges here.
Yeah.
Another factor is both Boys and Girls Club and YMCA, they got good programs, but they only last like 3 months and it's over. No more assistance for anybody the rest of the year. So.
Well, I think it was the YMCA goes on the rest of the school year because they're replacing another program.
Yeah, so Boys and Girls Club is summer help for, I know that we use Boys and Girls Club every week. It was a really good deal for when kids aren't in school. And then the YMCA is trying to do the before and after school care, which we also did, but it was Community After School Program, CAP was what it used to be called. And so they're trying to fill that gap in need. So there are different times of the year, but you're right. I mean, there are finite times, and I think all of the applicants, I remember saying if they got less, they would just just be able to help fewer people. So that's another thing. I think everybody was responded that way, if I'm remembering correctly. So so the before and after school care, I guess, is being offered at 2 sites or something like that to offset those costs so that parents can get to work on time, or stay at work until 5 or whatever. So.
Well, this maybe have been answered or generally understood, but the non-public service providers would get the two, the Albany Partnership Housing and Habitat. Are we, is there some way that we're including them in our ranking or weight or whatever with the public service groups, or are they completely considered separate?
They'll be considered separately because it's a different pot of funding.
Different money and the whole
Yeah, because public services is restricted to 15% of the total.
Yeah.
And so we have 7 applications for public services and then 2 for the remaining funding. So the remaining funding, I'm trying to remember what I mentioned before, but we might have around, again, it depends on how much we get. We might have around $220,000 to $230,000 or $40,000 or something like that for the remaining. So we can talk about those, and if it's easier to ease into that,
So when we're looking at the scores, for example, we shouldn't even consider one group with the others that we're ranking the scores and so forth.
Well, there are 2 applicants, and there's a request for more funding than what will be available. So you'll have to think about how to evaluate those 2 applications.
Right.
Yeah. I'll try to do some quick math to give you a number. If we had 220 or whatever, do you do a percentage of each applications? I know that one applicant had 3 different projects. Do you, fund 2 of the 3 if it looks like there's 60 to 80% available to fund, both applications? And I think Habitat said they would just, scale their performance measures to the amount of funding provided for those. So we're similar, but there's only 2 in that group compared to 7. Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got YMCA and Boys and Girls Club, they're pretty close, 18,000 and 10,800, which isn't too bad. And the programs needed for school or actually any age group, mostly the summer programs, are they just school age or are they all age?
You're talking about for the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah.
Well, it's school age kids. So it helps. I don't think they have the daycare, the under kindergarten. Yeah. Although I do remember they had a program, but that's not what they're asking for.
They have
they have a preschool program. They're asking for funding to help parents with the expenses for their kids to have care. I mean, it's kind of like sending them to camp all week, you know, so.
This is something good.
I can't remember, I think it's like it's like $75 a week for each kid or something like that, and they're trying to drop the cost down, as, you know, to help those,
Such a good deal.
income restricted households.
So, before and after this, 10 days. How about, YMCA, their program, what do you think? Looks like we're pretty even on that, those two.
YMCA runs throughout the school year.
That's right. I think the proposal, yeah, this is a new program.
So
where they're-
before and after school.
It's before and after school.
Okay. And then we have COAT. That's an interesting one. Because they're kind of enabling the homeless rather than, I mean, they need
You could say that, I guess.
I mean, even though come.
Meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
So one of the
Literally.
things that we talked about last year, a little bit, and tried to talk to Carol about is, because they serve a lot of people, we don't know if they're residents or not residents, I mean, if they're without a house, and they kind of go beyond the Albany city limits, is really focusing on the support they provide, the case management to help get the residents into Albany housing, right? So that we're really focusing on how many of the thousands of people that they, you know, make contact with and provide food and, you know, resource cards and stuff too. Start building relationships. Of those, how many people are we trying to get into housing? And I think that they framed their application that they were asking for funds for staffing to help, I think, with that piece of it. But I think they put in the performance measure of, you know, a lot of people. But anyway, that's what I remember their application. And this is something we talked about with them last year, is trying to structure the performance measures to how many people can we help get into housing. I mean, and it's definitely a huge benefit that they're reaching so many people and helping them stay alive with food and needs. But so you've kind of got two different types of
Yeah, because
outcomes.
so that they, Carol, she said that they did house 80 people somewhere throughout the year or something.
Right.
So that's good.
They're great liaison, as well between.
Good resource to give them kind of like a, kind of a line to get to some of these
Yeah.
folks and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of single-handedly, tracking, the homeless population that's not in a shelter, which is in itself a great data source. Yeah,
It seems that they don't line up with CDBG intentions and goals quite as closely as some of the other groups do. You know,
I mean, in the past, I've asked for money for tents, and we're like, nope, sorry. I mean, I think that the piece I just mentioned, where they're really trying to move people along the spectrum and get them out of their situation of being homelessness, is definitely correlated to everyone's goal of trying to get these people into safe housing, right? I think where we struggled last year is providing support to those that don't have any intention of wanting to be housed. And I don't know what the percentage breakout is of who they're serving. But certainly there are some folks that are, I mean, I did the pit count with Coat, and we were at the rest stop on the Sanium rest stop. I mean, a lot of people, those are the ones in their cars who are not the ones necessarily causing some problems in trash and, you know, cleanup and safety concerns along the riverfront. But, you know, I think that they're serving everybody, and some residents they're serving, they're really just trying to help keep them alive. And other residents are the ones that are, you know, whether it was paycheck to paycheck or, you know, a big car repair or medical bill that caused them to lose their housing, are actually trying to get into housing. So I see they're serving everyone, but I think Ron, you're right. I think that the group that CDBG might want to focus on is those that are trying to move along the spectrum a little bit. That said, I mean, CDBG money can be used to help with shelter operation and expenses. I mean, ideally, it doesn't become long-term housing like it has for many people just because of our housing situation. We don't have enough housing that's at the right support systems or whatever, or the price. So a lot of our emergency shelter has become sort of longer-term shelter.
When you went to the county at Cindy stop, were there, I know a lady that's where she would go at night and stuff, you know, but are they a lot of Albany, or are they from all over here? Or
They're
do they
Boone
even-
County, I mean, some, you know, that rest stop, you have different people, because they know that I think the police or the sheriff only comes through, you know, every couple of weeks, and they're really nice about, you know, parking your vehicle overnight. But I mean, some of them were identified as, you know, Albany area residents or whatever. I did this a year ago, but it was interesting. There were people that, you know, they're willing to be housed anywhere, so they might want to be Albany residents. It's just, you know, they're
But they go to Salem if the opportunity.
Absolutely,
arises.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I do think, you know, they have interaction with these people all the time because these are long-term living in their car situation. And so I think, you know, Carol is the expert and her staff on how many of them identify as Albany residents. And it sounds like the percentage is fairly high. Now, the percentage of people living at the city's Marvin Gardens that were Albany residents was actually fairly low.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And it's a nice place, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a, half a dozen this, half a dozen that, we don't know what to do, so.
So you were saying that that the request this year, although the metrics all kind of look like they did last year in terms of lots of individual interactions, the money that they requested for is really more targeted at the case management stuff, to get people to housing, right? So,
It's important.
yeah, I thought that was kind of confusing.
yeah, I mean, that's what she described, and it would be for
Right.
staffing and for case management. I think there's just, it takes people to provide all those services. And if we kind of say, we want this to help pay for the case manager. And also, these agencies are juggling other funding sources that are also very particular about what they can fund and not fund. And so they're, I think if you remember, Chance, it sounds like they're getting money, but the grants aren't paying for what they're asking for from CDBG, you know?
Yeah.
So I think agencies are always juggling, well, I know this grant's covering this piece of our operations, and CDBG, can you cover that gap that we're not getting funding for?
In my notes, Carol also said that they helped him get IDs and social security numbers and stuff like that. So that's, I don't know if that falls into it or not, but that's what so many of them need to get anywhere, because you can't do anything without an ID.
Yeah, and I mean, those services are essential in trying to get, those are the first steps of
Yeah.
getting integrated back into being able to apply for housing, right? So all that counseling and support. And I think that's absolutely what we want. You know, I mean, it would be an eligible expense in my opinion. And I just know that there's just have been some concerns about supporting the unhoused that don't want to be housed because of the impact it's having on, you know, city staffing and resources. So that's it. That's all. Just trying to draw a line there.
Absolutely. And the impact it has on the community in general. It's not just the resources, but the livability of the community. Right.
And you can't put them in separate, you know, say, okay, you don't wanna go, so you go over here, and you wanna go, so we'll try to help you, so, you know, it's hard, you know, just can't imagine what you all do. I really can't. Okay, anything else on code, what do you think?
It's a lot of money for,
John Robledo's trees.
20,000, yeah.
yeah, I guess in my mind, I would rather give them $5,000 towards, specific use of
Oh, okay.
money towards transitioning them. You know, I can't change their application, but money towards specifically transitioning them into, the next stage of,
And not be for staff and help them, what they need.
yeah, I would maybe, you know, put it towards specifically like case management, expenses. Is in my mind, versus supplies or something, but probably.
So, okay, so maybe funding them around 50%, is that, I mean, so what was, I don't know what our, this is just initial conversation, right?
Yeah.
Boys and Girls Club of YMCA, you know, I think if it's helpful, I'm not gonna put any numbers down, but I think everybody, if we talk about all of them, then you go back and go, okay, so if we only had $52,500 or whatever, what does that mean and percentage of their grant requests, you know? So maybe we, you know, just take these notes, you know, supporting the agency just at a reduced level, you know, is probably gonna be the situation for all the remaining applicants if you wanna fund them at all. I think COG's application for the senior companion program, it's always just such a small amount, it's like a drop in the bucket. I mean, not quite, but
Yeah.
yeah.
When I was looking at the different funding methods, given the fact that these are all so closely ranked, and there's so many apples and oranges trade-offs that it becomes really hard to make a lot of it, unless there's something really specific, like we don't want to support people as Albany or something like that. It's hard to differentiate them. It seemed like the simple one of just splitting them all, you know, and if someone's has everything paid, they take the remainder and split it amongst the rest, and they use that as the starting point. Seems like a good thing to do. And then if there are really specific things, we can say, oh, we don't want to fund them that much. We can kind of adjust the knobs around that. But there's so many variables in all of these that.
Yeah, that's what we did last year,
Yeah.
last year for the COG, they asked for 4,000, and we agreed, but when we put everybody else, go down to a fifth, half.
Yeah, so if you were to go that approach, which was one of the approaches that was on here, we would be looking at, assuming the money is $52,500, you'd be looking at around $8,000 for all the remaining after COG. So that's just a different percentage of each applicant's ask, right? So then it's just, if you want to start with the 8,000 across the board, and then, you know, among those, if you feel there's a certain need that is higher, or you're trying to get a higher percentage, you know, have the percentages of their application requests align a little bit better, then we can go along and look at a percentage. So I'm trying to run a couple of numbers while you guys talk about the applications that might be helpful for you.
It seems, I like this concept of the percentage as a baseline, and then potentially either reducing or increasing individuals, and then pulling off monies from the baseline for others, or even dropping maybe the weakest applicant or two, maybe just, you know, because I think that's how you get a system where it is competitive. You do have to compete for these funds every year, and you do have to have you know, a realistic amount, and it is leverageable then, so that you're getting an amount that is, and not to satisfy your entire need, but also to leverage. I don't know. So I think what you're saying is, I think I would like to. I mean, I would vote for going at 33% for everyone, and then okay, well, now let's dump some money into the OCOG because it's such a small amount, so that it takes it up to, you know, and we pull that off of.
Yeah.
This is kind of what we did last year.
Yeah, I like that.
And you could still fund Cascades West at a little bit less. I mean, it's up to, you know. So
Philosophically,
I'm kind of coming up with if we did, because it's such a small amount, and then I'll do the percentage on the rest of them and see what we've got here, so.
Yeah, and my thinking is always, okay, the larger groups get grants from everywhere, you know, a lot of other places where the little guys don't. And so that's where I think what we did last year kind of worked for everyone, but,
Yeah, I have, a slight different, like, thinking
okay.
that I'll just throw out, and this is my business brain probably, but, in my mind, I have $52,000, I wanna be the most effective, you know, everyone's asking, you know, for money, but I'm like really intrigued on the idea of hiring one position with that money, not doing the hiring, but funding that. I like just the idea of, wow, with this amount of money, like we can actually hire a full-time position, I think. And that one person, you know, the level of impact that they're gonna be able to serve continually. Because I guess I would also wanna see like that they would be able to fund that person's salary next year as well. That'd be probably important, but so it's just like I love the fair percentage concept, but then I also think like, okay, the effectiveness and the competitiveness of the application. And that's where I lean towards in my mind, like, okay, I would put $30,000 towards hiring an employee for this organization, and then $20,000 towards
Other things.
maybe, you know, the COG and
I kind of feel the same way. It seems to me that if you fund equally or just a percentage, you give everybody some money, nobody as much as they ask for.
Yes.
Everybody's got to go out and scramble and find some more money. Some will, some won't. And I think that if you fund something fully, you're going to accomplish something. I think there are some positions that, just looking at that aspect of it, like Jackson Street case management, you could fund a full position. I'm thinking that the chance position data, I have a little problem with funding a full-time data person. It seems that's a lot of data analysis, full-time person. Maybe that doesn't have to be full-time. And that's
They're also
indirect
doing
anyway.
training.
That's not direct service to anybody. It's indirect.
Yeah, I was thinking this, I mean, the indirectness of that one is, I mean, it's part of their overhead, which is the only way they could really justify that, but
And those two examples you just gave, Larry, are number 1 and number 7 as far as their overall scores. So if we're gonna weigh the scores in there, you know, that would probably somehow affect it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys wanted to look at the applicants that scored a little higher, having a higher percentage, or just not funding the lowest scoring, I mean, that's kind of, or certain applications where you feel like it's not the right connection or the right source of funds, this is a great time to do it. I just put, you don't have to, I just put up, like, if you guys were gonna look at something, if you're thinking of them all equally, I just did a couple of options up there, but those are not anything those are just numbers for you to see what a percentage, 37%, and then, if you were to evenly split, those are just what the numbers look like. So that's not trying to steer you guys in any way, but in case you're curious.
I like that as a baseline. Like I said, I don't disagree with what
Yeah,
these commissioners are saying. Maybe they're trying to get a little bit more down the competitive side than I am, but I think that's a good baseline to start at. We can
Right.
allocate from there,
Well, and
or deallocate.
I remember when I was on the council, the fire department or the police department would get these grants and stuff, and they hire some people. Well, when the grants go away, where's the money from? That's what I'm thinking, you know. If we do it this year, where do they get the money to continue it?
They keep going for grants every year.
Yeah, I think that's the case anyway.
Every
If you fund it
organization's
this
full-time.
year at 10% or 100%, next year is gonna be a question regardless. So
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
a more,
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a problem, if you do that a couple of years in a row, they start assuming that that's going to happen.
And
Yeah, and that's something we try to be really careful of. Receiving funding does not guarantee future years of funding. And so ideally, programs become self-sustaining if these dollars can leverage other dollars and all that. There's so much uncertainty, out there right now. But yeah, I do think these conversations are really helpful. And is this a position that is short term, or is this something that helps them with a shot in the arm until they can become more sustaining? I don't know if that's applicable in some of the applications, but
so, Robin, you were talking about giving more to, like, for more to one, and then kind of spread out the rest. And I'm thinking, what if we would think that way, and think each year pick a different one that we could really help, and do the others evenly? That might work, and that way nobody assumes that they're gonna get it. It's like we spread it around, maybe.
kind of like, kind of a low one, as you were saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good approach, and that's kind of in the past, it's like, hey, the top scoring applicants that the commission at the time decided was addressing the most priority needs is gonna receive, close to 100% of what they requested. And then it's just, but I don't know that if what are the needs, and a lot of these are addressing similar needs, so but that's certainly an approach that's been taken before, where not every single application was funded, especially those that may or may not, or that don't really align very well with the performance outcome. I've had that in the past. An example was Furniture Share. They did receive funding, but then some years they didn't, because it was sort of a secondary thing. It's like you're helping an existing person not get into housing, but reduce their costs just for furniture, and so it was harder for a lot of people to make that direct connection to an actual need that was identified in the plan. Now, CDBG funding is fairly flexible, but if we're trying to really tie something to a specific performance,
Yeah, we kind of go back to our goals, right? Like we've all sat down and made goals and plans for where we want to spend our energy towards. So I also look at that, like, okay, where are the areas of deficit right now that we didn't have last year that we have right now? I kind of think in those lines of like, okay, are we in a deficit with school care, childcare, school care? Are we in like, where are we gonna spend our energy? Like money dollars being that energy. Being a little, yeah.
But we do have a set of priorities that we had agreed on, right? And we could use those priorities to pick which of these we want to give most money to, if we want to select which one. Right?
So I just,
John, Commissioner Burklito is also on. I just wanted to, in case he had any comments, he is here. I just
Chime in.
move him over so that we can see him on the screen. Sorry, just can't see anybody. No, just move it across sideways, maybe.
And those
that
needs
way.
and his camera's not on, so it's not for him.
Oh, his camera's on, it's on my screen.
There's us.
Oh,
there he is.
Okay, now we can see
Yeah,
him.
maybe you can, I don't know if you can switch it long ways, but, that way we can see him and, sorry. I could get to switch on later. Yeah, that's fine. I can just move this, maybe move this.
Was it John?
Yeah.
Okay. John, do you have anything, any input on any of these? We've only got about halfway through the requesters. What do you think of what has been said so far?
Oh, I fully agree with what's being said so far. I think we've run into this every year is kind of like, how are we going to allocate and weigh what we're given to somebody at the end. So, and I agree that, working to resolve it in this manner is very acceptable, very appropriate, actually.
Okay, very good, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna go right ahead and we did code Carva. We didn't do anything with Carva,
You guys haven't talked about Carver.
what do you think?
I think right now, I'm a little biased from like some articles and stuff that went out this week of like their management, which is probably could be completely false and untrue. But it just raised my concern a little bit. I don't know if anyone read the reports there. Basically, internal employees that are no longer working there, exposing how their inner operations are. So now it's like, I don't have a clear mind about it, unfortunately. But that seems appropriate from what was said, that they would be hiring for another staff member. And I love the concept of what they do, absolutely. But that's not really the point here. It looks like here again, they're wanting a staff.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I remember asking for clarification over how much of that staff person is helping the residents that are Albany residents, versus the others. I have heard that a lot of the victims are Lynn County residents, compared to Benton County. But yeah, I found that her response a little bit confusing. But yeah, I mean, at some point, if you want to, you don't have to fund every application at a certain percentage. Like in the past, it's whatever you think. But I can also, we'll normally do, once we know how much money we get or what the percentage we're looking at, depending on, our funds coming through, reach out to all of the agencies that you want to provide funding and just, this is all we have this year, or do you want to accept it or not, or forgo this year, so. Because I do think it's hard to, I like your approach, let's fund a couple, and then every year we focus on some, but it's hard to pick which ones.
Oh, it is, because Carva, I mean, isn't needed. What's not needed, that's the problem.
I will say this, I've been a receiver of funds from Carva and a lot of my renters over the years.
Yes.
So I think I struggle with I should probably maybe redact myself from this specific, because I think their use of funds and the function of their things is ineffective and not operative. Like, I just don't think it's an effective
Oh, okay.
thing.
Well, see, that's the information I want to hear. I really do.
But who am I to say that? I'm just letting you know maybe where I'm at. I don't know if that, I don't have, a personal, connection and relationship there for me to redact. It's just like I have experience.
Sure.
It's kind of like the Albany Helping Hands situation. I don't work there, not connected in any way. But I have a lot of bias now, where I would maybe be less apt to want to give money or to give money. So I guess I'm just letting you know, like, maybe I feel that. I've done this 6 years, I've worked with them. I had a similar feeling with the furniture share too. It's like so wonderful. They come in and give all this furniture, and for free, and that person moves within a month. I've seen it multiple times, but I've partnered with furniture share So I think I don't know what to say here, other than I'm a voice for the community, and it's like sometimes I have experiences with a lot of these
Sure.
organizations, and
Well, you're also a commissioner here, and it's a data point.
That's what you're supposed to do.
It's a data point, and that's what we're looking at.
yeah, I just hope it's, what do you think, Aaron, like if is there lines there of like, you still want to remain logical, like just look at the application, look who they serve, and
I think we have to trust each other not to have
Yeah.
access to crime.
Right, right, and I mean, there's collective input occurring, and so, I think that, each person, if you have
That's what this is for.
What
it's
is,
hard to know.
what's the specific part of the data point that you're trying, that is concerning to you?
Again, it was just, there's probably multiple.
Okay. Probably too big of a discussion for this purpose?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it related to mismanagement of funds, or is it related to how the funds are spent specific to their mission?
Mismanagement, and who they help. Like, I would say,
Like they pick and choose me.
definitely pick and choose,
Okay.
and then, I would say, and I've been on the receiving side of abuse situations, so, I understand, but also, these girls pretty often can just get money. Certain girls, not all girls, but can just get money for making a statement or claiming something. And they'll get the money and they'll move into one of my spaces, and guess who also moves in? The dude. So
Gotcha.
it's just,
Gotcha.
I would say it's not, I don't see it rescuing any girls. I'm not saying there's not great stories as well in my situation, though. It's never, or they'll put them in a hotel, or they'll try to place them somewhere, and pretty immediately that guy is there.
Yeah.
And you can't control that, but it's also money, grant money, federal money, whatever, money that is kind of just spinning. So yeah, I guess it's just a thing for me.
That to me really puts up a red flag, because when Helping Hands started having their issues, we decided to, hey, let's just kind of hold off and see if they can get their act together and whatever, and they never have yet. And so what Courtney just said to me, if they're mismanaging or if they're not helping the right people, to me, that's just a no. I mean,
Well, it's hard to know whether they're the staffing needs are there to help the others, but this is good information to know. I think that especially when you've got a lot of competition, what are the program priorities that maybe you want to focus on, and it can be diverse, but those outcomes, Carva is counting the number of people that are staying in their shelter, but it's hard, getting that successfully integrating out and not back into relationship. That's
Placing them in their shelter personally, which they don't have a lot of rooms, that's one thing. But there's a lot of money, because they don't have more rooms, there's a lot of money that's going to putting them in a hotel or putting them in.
and
One of
that's
my
where the
spaces.
issue starts, where the
Yeah, there's no management
Yep.
around that, like,
Yep.
okay, they get a check for $3,000 and the next day the guy's there, so it's also kind of a play.
So there is the new house in Albany that CDBG funds provided support for the security fencing and the lofts and stuff, so.
And that's where I'd be like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's good differentiation.
Yes.
I really appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
Me too. Okay, well, thank you, Courtney. That's-
Well, within this small range of scores, they were the bottom score.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How about Chance? Let's go to Chance. They're asking for $30,000. I can't remember before.
It's for that data.
Oh, that's the data one, yeah.
I can totally see the need that they need somebody doing that. I couldn't understand whether it's a part-time or what position.
Yeah.
I think
I agree with
part-time.
that.
They seem to indicate that I think it was almost all or nothing. What I remember hearing, that if they didn't get the money, they didn't, or might not be able to fund the position at all, or it would have to be a part-time position.
I think they did say part-time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the other thing was, it was also, so it was for doing data analysis because they're growing and they're hopeful that that data analysis can help them get more money. So there's at least an opportunity
Yes.
for this position to become self-funding in some sense, because maybe they can bring more money in. And it wasn't just the data analysis, they were doing training of people in the shelters, right? As part of the program to try to get people some jobs.
Yes, so that,
Yeah, I think that they're trying to have one existing staff person trained on the data systems, but that person is training the clients to help with that data entry, so that then, yeah, they are also doubling up and getting job skills. I mean, I do like that double benefit, but that's the way to connect it back to a tangible rather than a sort of a secondary direct benefit to the residents. I don't know how we would structure that in the performance outcomes. I mean, it's easiest for me to, this is helping with operation and overhead, because it's not really case management. I don't know. I mean, but it would be counting the number of people staying in the shelter as a performance outcome.
and it allowed, my understanding, it would allow the director to do more of what she needs to do rather than also doing it on the data.
And the piece that she was speaking to that would help the grand story of
Yes.
their mission is that, you know, police, fire, all these agencies are really looking to chance right now and looking, you know, asking for numbers and asking for, you know, the stories and asking like for more data to the structure. So I could see like there's a need in order, maybe it's not direct to, you know, a unhoused person, but it is direct to the structure as a whole. And I would say hats off to them lately of what they've been doing in general. And that's where anything that they're putting their money towards right now is a huge benefit for us as a community. And that's where I really like the idea of them having more staff to kind of manage this monster that's growing so quickly.
I would like to point that out, both Chance and Jackson, to your outside data, as opposed to Boys Club and YMCA, even though they score very, very high on our thing. These guys are addressing this very fast growing 18% year over year unhoused people. It's not going to grow less this year. I don't think anybody is think it's going to, homelessness is going to contract this year. It's probably going to be significantly worse. So, yeah, so being able to get out ahead of that and help these guys is probably money well spent to a certain degree. So, because of that outside data.
Sounds good.
Unfortunately, you know, they didn't, you know, score as high, quite as high as some of the other ones.
It is for a full-time person, the data management?
It wasn't full-time. I mean, I think it's just a part of somebody's position. I mean, I have to go back. I tried to pull up the applications. I can look at that, but I'm just trying to take some notes. It seems like we've got a couple that, you know, you want, if we were thinking of percentages. COG Senior Companion Program, and then because of the outcomes and the needs, Chance and Jackson Street, but those are maybe higher percentage ones, and it's possible that you may or may not want to fund CERDVA. And then, you know, again, these all scored, Boys and Girls Club scored higher than the YMCA, but I mean, I think they're offering a similar service, just different times of the year. So, but I'm just trying to take a few notes if you're thinking about that. Maybe, while I look up, I'll try to look at the application real quick while you guys are talking. If you have a few more minutes, and can save a few more minutes. The other two applications, the two housing, Habitat would be doing basically housing rehab, similar to Denver Northwest, and then Albany Partnerships has, it's basically 4 properties, but 3 projects, and I went and looked up the amounts for that because we've got more in requests than what I'm anticipating we're gonna have. So if we had around $227,000, which I'm not sure we'll have, but we have about 73% of the funding for what we received in applications. So I went ahead and kind of multiplied what they requested by 73%. And the one thing about Habitat, they put a lot of houses down there and things move kind of slower with CDBG because we have to do environmental reviews. It's a lot of it's a lot of staff time and time, and also, I mean, we have lead-based paint testing and all the other stuff that happens when you're dealing with homes. So I'm not sure that they would actually be able to help as many houses as they think they can within a year. I mean, the funding doesn't go away after a year, but I feel like, I mean, we definitely want homes to be improved and so they, you know, are fully improved and not necessarily just a little Band-Aid, you know, thing. Each housing rehab application requires, you know, a fair amount of time on our end, which is totally fine. It's worth it, sort of, but I think 25 houses is probably, or whatever number it was, is way up there. So anyway, I just wanted to say that about Habitat and complying with all the federal rules and everything. It's just, it's a lot more than what one might think, you know, so. But what I did do is look up how much the partnership had requested. So they basically have 2 normal rental properties. Songbird Village has 48 units and they were requesting 51,000, and that's for the community room. There's a requirement in the state law that basically air conditioning be provided in all of the units or in a place where people can go, and so the cost to do that in all of their units would have been a lot, so they're requesting improvements to the community room at this site. Same thing with their other property, Periwinkle, which is a bunch of, they have a community room with 2 units above it. They also have a roof for that. There are 2 units, so those 2 units would benefit from the roof as well. And then Life Skills, I think one had it's 2 houses that help different, you know, formerly homeless people gain life skills in housing, but the, I think one of them had siding. Anyway, one of the projects was 26,500-ish, one was 51,000, and then the other Life Skills, well, it's split over, I think, 2 homes, 52,500. If you were looking at trying to fund certain projects. So with that, I will look up, well, you guys might talk about this. I'll try to look up what Chance, what Chance that I was looking at? Yeah.
With the
Chance.
job description.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, my other question too is really about Denver Northwest. So if it's a similar thing that we're doing, I don't know, part of me likes the idea of the loan coming from the equity of that homeowner and putting it on the ending sale of the property. So I guess we could say, oh, we need maybe both services. One being.
But Denver Northwest didn't apply for more funding.
Right.
They're gone, and unfortunately, managing revolving, well, they're not gone. They're finishing up the funding that they have, and they're taking a break, and I don't know if they'll reapply for funding.
Okay.
So one is a housing rehab program. Habitat would, even though they actually do have, with the homes that they build, they do have mortgages. This wouldn't be a revolving loan fund program where they sort of lien the property that they're improving and then hope to get the money back. Now that does help build up a pot of money that is what Denver West is trying to do, build up a pot of money that eventually revolves back. You don't know exactly when it's gonna come back, but, so it's a lot more paperwork to do alone than to provide a grant to people. So, I mean, certainly a consideration, but they're not, I don't
They're
know if
not
they'd be willing to
considered, yeah.
to do that or not. That's certainly something I could ask if you guys would like me to.
Yeah, I guess my thought was like how to best steward, grant money. Like, yeah, I guess the equity of someone's home eventually should pay for the fixings of their property. But at the same time, some people just need accessibility to their front door, or they, in order to stay safe.
Well, I'm thinking that we ought to, this is just throw this out, I think we ought to fund Jackson Street fully for the 30,000, and then we ought to do the COG Senior Companion Program full. And after that, it gets a little more difficult for me, but,
Yeah, you might have about
maybe
$18,000
some money
left.
that, depends on the chance thing, maybe fund a part-time for chance. But after those two, I'm a little more open myself, but I think Jackson Street and COG should be fully funded, both of them.
Okay.
So you're thinking, okay,
With the idea that Jackson Street, you can accomplish something. That's the program, and they get funded for it, you'll be able to do it, and they'll have an impact.
and then let's just say 30,000 plus the COG money, sort of 34,000. We have around maybe $52,000 hypothetically, we don't know. So maybe we have about $18,000 left over, and we could potentially fund half of the shelter staffing and bring them from a part-time to a more full-time position. I don't know. And then that would leave no money, obviously, for Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, or Code. So it's kind of like, go back to that percentage idea, or take the top three and say come back again for the others.
Throw the dice.
Which is, feels better to divvy it out. So lovely right there. And make everyone, hey, thanks for putting your time in, put an application. Here's a little bone.
So we're thinking, it's fully Jackson.
Well, I mean, maybe we're getting a little too far down the solution.
Well, so Jackson Street, it was for their 18 to 24-year-olds. It's those that are too old to stay in the actual shelter. They are living in houses that Jackson Street has been granted or given.
Okay.
So it seems like, you're still a young adult and need help with those life skills, between 18 and 24.
You're in danger of being homeless for sure.
Yeah,
certainly.
I mean, this shouldn't necessarily be a criteria, but there is more money out there. I mean, I don't know, the landscape just could change drastically for homelessness and helping people with shelter and services than there are for other programs. I mean, I think chances they've got the money they need to run the shelter, that it's just those grant opportunities aren't paying for this other piece of it necessarily. So I did look up the chance. So in the packet, I thought you gave me a revised application, but in the packet, they're actually requesting a lot more than 30,000. I'm like, no, we have to have a limit because, they really need $50,000 to fund a full data administrator person. And when I got the application, I'm like, sorry, we're capping the amount because there's so much competition. And that may be where her verbal presentation was scaling it back a little bit, so it doesn't quite align with what is actually in her written application. So,
What did you ask for?
they were asked for $53,000, but I told them we have to cap you at 30,000. It's too much. We don't even
Okay.
know if we'll have
That was an
$53,000.
one FTE for
That was
the
a-
data manager, is that right?
Right, that's their full FTE position.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and that's where I think she sort of changed it a little bit. I think it sounds like she wants a full data administrator person. I just don't know how much time, I mean, once you get the data in, it's in. I mean,
have some
clients change. I just don't know that it's a
thoughts
full-time position.
About data, and I know that data needs to be data driven. We've heard that now for at least 10 or 15 years in the data. And I think maybe we allow data to replace, maybe I'm old fashioned in this, but to replace the idea of just personal relationships, people interacting with people, which is what this really comes down to when you're really helping someone. I don't know, chasing data, it seems to me at some point, maybe can drive out the process of actual human relationships in these systems and scenarios. That's just off the top of my head.
I get what you're saying.
But
Well, I mean, that's a really good, I think they have staff, and it seems like they build relationships with their clients, and then those that have kind of moved on from the basic needs are ready to try to gain skills to get themselves out of housing. That seems like what she described in that workforce, training. But what she was explaining they need data for, we have to know race, incomes, ages, all the things that they collect on intake for anybody that comes into the shelter. It has to go into this management system that's a federal, it's a management system for homeless people. And so they have to get that data in there in order to run reports. And so she was saying it isn't supplanting the interaction, but they have to get the data into a computer so they can run reports. Apparently they just have, they're filling out sheets with this information. And so when they need to report to us, for example, on how many people they've served at different income ranges and the race and ethnicity, they're hand counting up all this information rather than going into the computer and getting a report on all the demographics and information that they need in order to report back to their grantors or to apply for grants. And so to me, it sounds like they've got the staffing for the case management, and I think that that's what their other grant sources are paying for. But what's missing is these people don't have time to enter the data into the computer about each of their clients, which is a requirement of their granting agencies.
And we all know
And
that's
that's
time.
That's the thing, that's what I heard, is that this is kind of an artifact of the fact that they've been growing. And they've been successful
Yeah.
in helping the people to the extent that now agencies, police agencies or cities are saying, we need to know what you're doing in this space, or they apply for a grant and the grantor says, we need to know what the statistics are for helping. Just the kind of stuff we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And they can't really answer those questions effectively now because you need a database to do that. You can't ripple through a bunch of paper.
Right. I mean, other agencies that are providing shelter are lobbying at the state and doing all that. I mean, that was one of the things they want to be able to help further the cause for more funding to, move people out of homelessness. But it's a really good point. You have to build relationships, which is what COAT is trying to do, even though it's hard for us to justify, feeding people until you build up that trust and have a relationship with people, are they willing to trust you and then coming in for services? So COAT has the same situation, similar, on a different scale. But I do think there's that challenge of, we know data is really important, but it's not providing that direct service to the person that's staying in your shelter. It's the overhead piece of it.
Yeah.
Overhead is an eligible expense for shelters. Sort of like the case management would be same thing, providing staffing. So we could fund it. It's just not that direct connection to the people. It's not benefiting the people unless they get more money from other, you know what I mean? It's not a direct benefit. It's sort of that,
Back office.
yeah,
it's
right.
reporting stuff.
And is that an issue? Like, just
Like I said, overhead
Continue.
expenses are eligible. We're gonna be counting all the people in the shelter, but this funding isn't directly providing that case management piece that Ron was just raising. Now, it could be providing the skills training. I think with the scale back budget that I mentioned at the most, you can apply for is 30,000. They're trying to figure out, maybe we can train people on how to enter the data. I just don't know how often you actually have to enter data. I mean, I know people are coming and going from the shelter, but it couldn't be, it could be. I mean, if you have a report coming up, maybe it's a day long job. I mean, I don't know. Entering data into to me just doesn't seem like it would take that long once you understand the system. And if they have clients helping with it, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one because it's not a direct.
It is because you, for one, know where you're going already. There's someone there, maybe the clients can't help, or it takes a lot to train them to help.
I mean, the benefit is for those clients staying at shelter to help get them out of shelter.
Yes, and that gives them skills.
To me, it's like job skills, but the way it's framed and the way the job skills programming and CDBG works, if we're to take it out of public services, it has to be completely different. And so that's why we've got to squeeze this into public services. It's basically they need help with overhead to do things that they really need to be doing, which is data management.
Okay.
I mean, or data entry. And it's just not a sexy ask, and it's not a, in the feel good ask, the better term. But I think that
I just see they have a need. I see that they're
Yeah.
growing. They're massive help to our community. And
Oh, I
where
agree.
my mind
I agree.
goes, it's like it's up to them to determine where their deficit is and where the need is, and it is, in my mind, it is helping the monster that they've created.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, success
It's a good one.
has pain points, right? So they need more staff. And like I said, this is totally eligible as an overhead expense. I think the reason why I started rambling was because if we cut their, are they gonna be able to do anything if they don't receive funding? So I went back and looked at their application, and they actually were, asking for something a little bit different than what we heard her say. So I think your question is how much should we fund their request? And I don't know, because what she presented is different than what's in the application.
Can you remind me what's in the application then?
Well, they're funding an actual data management person for $53,000.
Okay.
But what she mentioned was they need a data person, but the way she described it that I remember was training a certain staff and training all the staff on certain things, and then they were gonna start training clients to help with the data entry. That's what I remember hearing. So
Yes, that's
I
what I
think
remember
that's
hearing
just a
as well.
way to save money, to help them, because we don't have enough money to pay for a full staff person for them.
Mhm.
And leveraging their increased data into more funds, into growth of the organization through more funding.
Okay, so where are we at?
Do you want me to, so are there any applicants you want me to ask questions? Like if you were to receive less money and, are you sure you could still go through? I can ask them that. We still have, it'd be helpful to know how much money we're getting. So you have March 17th. The problem is that if we actually find out, like I say, I actually have to have the plan ink dry
Yes.
a week and a half later, right? So it sounds to me like there is certainly some support for funding certain agencies either fully or at a really high percentage. And I think that's great. And I put higher on those that I heard, we're hearing about for the public services.
Okay, so should we go down and just say we want a full Cog, are we going?
Yeah, you can do that. Are there any that you feel you don't want to fund this year? Because that will kind of change your percentages and all that. Maybe we look at it that way and then we can work our way backwards.
Didn't we give Carter quite a bit last year for the fence?
5,000.
5,000?
No, they got 55,000,
55.
Because it was not the.
something like that. It was around 50,000. I think
Oh.
Family
So-
Connections got 55.
It was
We were able to take them out of
the
human
housing,
services
yeah.
because
So it's a big
improvements to a shelter are not services. Those are
Okay.
different.
So it started with a $5,000 ask for the fence, is that?
No. Anyway, it's, they are getting 40-something thousand, close to $50,000 the year that they're currently spending down right now.
Right.
So that could be the beginning of our big gift.
They
And,
previously
people-
received
others.
money to help with, the hotel beds. That was a smaller amount.
That was an idea.
And then, yeah, and then the most recent ask was we were able to take it out of public services because it's a facility improvement. So,
Okay, I missed that whole piece.
yeah.
So, any other, questions that
I mean,
I ask?
unless you want to go back and ask her to based upon feedback we've had here from the community, if we want to go past and ask them if they want to refine. I guess we can't really ask people to refine their application at this point. We've already made it.
No, I mean, I think
Yeah.
you guys need to decide which ones do you want to fund?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you try to fund certain applications fully, it means you're not gonna be able to fund some applications,
So-
right? So if there are certain ones that you feel like, don't wanna fund that, I think might help you figure out how to fully fund or closely fully fund some of the applications that you feel are the strongest and will address the greatest needs.
Has Carter used currently using the money?
So do we wanna go cog full? Or do we wanna go with a percentage like, we're thinking of?
I said, did someone know what Commissioner Tim suggested? Because I support that idea. It was a start and kind of.
Yeah, and I kind of put that up there,
The whole
it's,
thing. Oh,
I
is
just
that
put
what this
higher,
is?
well, I put higher under the ones that you talked about fully
Oh,
funding.
okay.
I don't know that we
Jackson,
won't have
Shannon.
funding to fund and them fully.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, of course, COG has such a small amount, you could fully fund it, or even a little bit, they're having problems right now spending their funding right now. But if they start paying for staff time at the agency, it'll spend a lot quicker, but it's not, I mean, their mileage reimbursement is like peanuts, really. I mean, it's a really small amount, the mileage reimbursement. So we've only reimbursed them $200 to date
Oh,
so
my.
far for this year. So, I mean,
That's not right.
you know, initially it started off with a mileage reimbursement, now they're requesting a little bit of money to cover staff costs to administer the grant. And so, I mean, I think that they can provide that mileage reimbursement for less, if that's something to think about.
If they're not spending, there's not people out there to help, you think?
Well, it's
Maybe not.
also, everything was delayed last year, so the time that we're reporting, it just, I just want you to know that, the mileage doesn't draw that full amount down necessarily. It can if they get really busy, but, they're also trying to pay for a little bit of staff time, that's all.
Based on my gut and our real goals for this money. I love this. I like Chance, Jackson Street, and Cog. I don't see a direct correlation to Boys and Girls Club and YMCA for homelessness prevention. I understand it's a massive help to low-income families, but are those families and children becoming homeless or at the risk of homelessness because of that? No. That's just where my mind goes. Cardly, you know how I feel about that. So I like putting energy towards these two shelters that serve vulnerable people that want to be helped directly. They're going to a shelter to be helped. And that is a great place for them to land, and I love that. And then COG, you know, for those vulnerable that scenario, like, it's a small amount of money and it's a great piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you on that.
I
That
agree.
sounds good.
I'd just like to caveat, just to tell Carva that maybe for their next round, they should focus on the shelter piece of their business.
So are you saying full funding for Jackson Street and full for COG? Is that what you're saying?
That's kind of what you were
That's what I
saying.
said, yeah.
Well, we won't have
We don't
enough
have
money
that
for
much.
that, but I would say let's
Go
go
higher.
maybe, 4,000 to COG and then whatever's left, split it between Jackson and Chance. I don't know.
Sure,
That's just the starting point of a thought.
that's reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I mean, you could, if that in the 50s, you could do, if you wanted to fund one other agency, you could do like 20,000 to Chance and to Jackson Street. If you're wanting to fund Chance and Jackson Street, the same amount, and then COG at, 4,000 or whatever. And then you might have $8,000 to $10,000 to fund another agency if you were wanting to try to support another agency. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, the possibilities are multiple.
I guess I'm missing what you're saying, because I'm
Well,
doing the
if
math
you
on that
wanted to
64.
fund Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, or COAT,
But to fully
That's
fund
what she said.
Chance and Jackson,
She said, say fully, she said.
20 each.
like,
Okay.
fund them at a higher percentage.
That makes sense. Yep.
Or maybe it isn't, I mean, it would be, if you just did 20,000, said 30. If you wanna fund any of the other agencies,
Mhm.
that's just the question.
You wanna be
I guess.
ready to
If
be
you
able to-
do,
yeah.
we could carve out the 8,000 or whatever number that is, 6,000, whatever the number is, to provide some
Yeah.
support to either the agencies.
The only other-
Kind of do the difference is split
Yeah.
between Jackson Street and Chance.
The only other part is where I want to put money, per one single voice here, is Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. Because it's children of our community. They're always going to be coming and asking us, there's a relationship between the city and them. And I'd love to continue putting some dollars in their way. So if there was a small portion, like even if it was like
I mean,
5,000 each, if we had that left,
yeah, you could do like,
We wouldn't
I
have that
don't
much.
know, I mean,
we
some-
would, yeah.
you could do
No, that's-
that, you could do, these are just random numbers here, you could do,
Sure.
and then you could do whatever this ends up being. I have to see if it works out.
Yeah.
Or, but whatever, I
You're
mean,
53 right there, so.
that's 53, and then once we know more, so I think that the two Boys and Girls Club and YMCA and COG, those are scalable. I mean, all of them are scalable. They can put the dollars towards the households that earn the lowest incomes if they want to do that, and or figure out how they're going to do that, because they're serving the same kids through the whole summer, so they could figure out how to, or the school year, figure out how they wanted to allocate funds.
Yeah, so that would be.
It's just something like that.
I think, actually, to think about it, I like what we're doing here because I think our highest priority is provide housing, which none of this is gonna help with. But then it's reduce homelessness, which Chance and Jackson directly
Yes, they
address,
do.
right? Because they're keeping people out. And then below that is to make services available to LMI households, which COG, Boys and Girls Club and YMCA all satisfy that. So I think this allocation matches our priorities that we've talked about.
It does.
And then the code and Carga, the issue with those that came up with both of them is that they're not really addressing those in the same way, number one. And number two, they're both, like Carga said, out of the 125 people they serve, 25 are Albany residents. So there's this dynamic, there's this little bit of this tension that's going outside of Albany, right?
Yeah.
So if we're gonna prioritize things, it seems like that's a reasonable prioritization.
Yeah, you've got basically Chance and Jackson Street at 2/3 rate, 66% or 65%, and then the YMCA Boys and Girls Club and COG is probably at 70%, and then Boys and Girls Club and YMCA are at a third to 40% or something like that. Just looking at the percentages or whatever. So again, what we could do, this is just all very tentative. Maybe we'll know more by the March 17th meeting, and then you can refine numbers. This will, if I have some downtime, I'll at least be able to start working on the action plan and putting in some of the information for these, but, yeah, maybe tentative, I guess, and.
I still disagree with this, because
Oh.
everybody's out there scrambling for money still, and nobody's getting everything. I just don't agree with that approach.
That's, we wanna hear that.
You have more time, we'll have more time then.
Yeah, this
Okay.
isn't a decision. I don't know that we rarely ever fully funded an application because we just haven't had the money to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to put more money towards Jackson Street, or whatever, I mean, just, you don't have to fund Boys and Girls Club. It was just a,
Yeah,
Where would you like, I can't remember.
I mean, Jackson Street now is getting 20,000 and, I mean, right, I mean, the most that they've gotten, I think, has been around $20,000 in years past.
Larry, which, did you want to fully fund which one?
Well, Jackson Street fully and COG, but if, what Ann is saying, maybe they don't need 4,300 if they can't spend what they've got now, but maybe that could go down a little bit, but after Jackson Street and COG, you know, I'm pretty open personally myself, on anything else, except I agree, card B, probably shouldn't do that one. I think the YMCA one is very expensive for what you get, but it's good, but it's very expensive. I think Boys and Girl Club is better than YMCA.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Any thoughts about Chance?
And Chance, I think, I see their need. I don't think, I think it should be a part-time thing rather than a full-time. But I don't have a problem with some money to Chance, maybe what's left or something.
So clarifying questions to these agencies and for me would be, for Jackson Street, I guess I need a clarification, maybe it's in the application if I read it more closely, but, exactly what is this $30,000 position?
For Chance.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, for Jackson
For
Street.
Jackson Street, it was basically case management for the kids that are 18 to 24. They have it for those in the house. I think it's just helping them continue with those life skills. I mean, they have the housing, and I think it's just to help them with that life skills piece. But I can ask them both.
So $30,000 would hire a full-time position.
No, neither.
Part-time.
No, yeah,
Right, it would have to be part-time, but $30,000.
it's not going to be a full-time position.
Okay.
No. Because we have a limit on the amount that we've told people to apply for, they would have asked for a lot more, but we don't have that much money to probably fund one full-time position if we gave all the money to one agency.
So even if we gave them the $30,000, it's really not all that they need
No,
anyway.
So they all said they would just scale their services. I mean, I don't know. These are questions I'll ask them, and send the responses back.
To me, that's actually would be one of the nicest things to understand as to what extent their needs are scalable. It's like Boys and Girls Club and YMCA, those are very scalable. They said less money, just less scholarships, and they can target it to the most
Yes.
need. But some of these other positions, like if we give them 15,000,
So-
would they be able to use it?
They all answered that question
Yeah.
in their presentations. I will follow up a little bit more specifically with Chance Jackson Street and Chance, because I think that there's some confusion around Chance and, if they received a small amount of money, would they be able to do anything? If I just switched this just to try to almost fully fund Jackson Street and still give Chance something, because it sounded to me like that organization is one that's providing a needed service. So again, these are just drafty for conversation starting points, kind of gave 5,000 more to Jackson Street, took 5,000 from Chance. So, could they do anything if they were to get something like that? And I asked them for discussion purposes, if they only received half of their grant request, would they be able to move forward? And so half is what everybody was supposed to be responding to, and my recollection is they all said yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking for Jackson's Reed's case management to go to the older kids, I guess. How many are they dealing with? Because it wouldn't be, if they had 20 or 30, yeah, it'd be full-time, but if they have like 6 or 7, it'd be so much time for each one, so it probably wouldn't be full-time. And that might,
Well, I think I would recommend, if you have time, to go back and listen to the recordings of the meetings. They're on the Community Development Commission webpage. We can just send a link to that webpage. I will follow up and verify that if the applicants we're talking about here were offered half, even though you might give them more than half, are they willing to proceed, and what does that look like? And that's helpful. Because that was the question, I sent them all the questions in advance. If you were to only receive half of what you requested, just as a number to start with, would you be able to proceed? And I just remember them all saying that none of them said, no, we can't move forward.
it would help.
Yeah, there's a different concept when it's like, oh, we capped the ask. We're really only partially helping all of these people, or at least the Jackson chance. Their real ask would be, or would be higher for that position. But we capped them at what they're allowed to ask for.
Well, I mean, so in the past, you've always funded at least 2 applications. So if we know that we only are getting $50-something thousand to have applicants request more than that amount. And so we talked about dropping it down, so did 30,000 just in case we were to get 60,000 or something. You can always give applicants more money, than what they ask for. That's happened in the past for non-public service groups. And, once we know the number, kind of go back and everything. It's just, in the future, we'll just have to talk about next year. Do you want to limit the requests? It makes it a lot harder when you've got somebody asking for $80,000.
Yes.
And we know we don't have that much. Do you want to try to spread the money out a little bit, or it doesn't matter? I mean, those are good questions, and it's better to get that in the application so that so that it doesn't make your decision even harder. So
Okay,
so then between now and March, if you could consider. And I'll send you out, so you won't be able to fully fund Habitat or the Albany Partnership, or you could pick which one, if you wanted to fully fund one, and then the remaining to another. We didn't get there, but I do think.
We could wait it that way though, if we wanted to, right?
okay. That sounds good.
So I'll send these notes out here to you, just the math that this was just for discussion purposes. This isn't deciding anything, but just trying to show you what it might look like if you went a couple different approaches. And then the last row is more of the reflective of what the discussion was. Except I can take Boys and Girls Club and YMCA off. It's fine. It's up to you guys.
John, do you have any afterthoughts? No?
None.
Man of many words. I guess we've got kind of our assignment to think about it more. And so right now, is there any business from the public? Nope.
Yeah, I know there are some people listening in, but I don't think they're wanting this. I think they were listening in to hear if you made any tentative decisions.
Okay. And then business from the commission.
Does anybody know who the new Secretary of HUD is? Everybody know that?
Probably
That's where we get the money, right?
Yeah. I did know that person.
It could be very interesting.
I haven't heard a single word from HUD.
It could completely mystifying, couldn't it?
Scott Turner.
Congress appropriates the funding.
I think.
Congressman from Tennessee, probably, or something like that.
Well, and DEI is
Turner.
agreeing with the fair housing laws and, there are fair housing laws that we have to comply with, and all the service providers have to comply with.
Yeah, it's not been targeted.
Sleepy Ben.
Well, thanks for the extra time today.
Yeah, I appreciate.
I think this will make
Senate
the March meeting go a lot faster. And I will send you any information I get back from
It's got two
some of the
teams.
agencies, so. And if you think of something else, just let me know, and we'll reach out to the agencies.
And I appreciate all the input. I mean, this has been a really good commission, I think. I really appreciate it. We don't all agree or we don't all think the same, it's just really good, so.
Is that all right?
I will adjourn the meeting at
Yeah, that's all right.
5:37.
It's all right, but